What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN, right here on Game Plus Network. Thanks, as always, for taking the time to hang out. Chris Meaney here with you. Tino's getting me rattled. Producer Tino's getting me fired up before the show even starts, talking about the Eagles and the Lions this week, and Detroit getting their first win against the Birds. I hope it happens, honestly. At this point, if you're a Philadelphia fan, you just have to hope that the losses continue to pile up, and you just get a good look at Jalen Hurts. I don't think that you can close the book on him as a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think a lot of people want to close the book on him and take shots at him. And I'm hearing in the fantasy community, well, he only scores fantasy points in the second half. Well, guess what? They all count the same. He is QB3 in fantasy. I had to double check, and he is indeed QB3 in fantasy, right there, tied with Kyler and just a couple points back of Tom Brady. They all count the same, people, and the Eagles are going to be playing garbage time all season long. Actually, their schedule kind of turns I think it's actually one of the better schedules in terms of strength of schedule. They have some soft opponents, of course. They play a lot of NFC East teams down the stretch here after the Lions. So who knows? Maybe they'll win a couple games. But if you're an Eagles fan, you don't want them to win too many football games. Let's be honest. They have 2 top 6 picks as of right now, owning Miami's first round pick, and Carson Wentz looking pretty good in Indy. If the Colts can move on and make the playoffs, it's another first round pick that they'll have there. I did want to talk Eagles, Tino. Like, I wasted already too much time. We maybe a little bit of Philly talk here on the show. We got a fantastic guest here today. One of the best, not only in the industry, one of the sharpest football minds out there, but just a straight up good dude. And once upon a time here on Anthem Sports and Entertainment, I had a show, which wasn't just my show. Jake Seeley and this guy joined me on the show, Fantasy Sports Network, the first ever 24/7 channel dedicated to fantasy sports. Had some sports gambling in there as well. Good times. I'm sure the people in the control room in Toronto will be happy to hear that Justin Boone of The Score is going to join me today. We're going to talk a couple buy low candidates, some sell high candidates, get his thoughts overall. We're now into week 8. Can you believe it? Week 8. This basically is the halfway point. Another 7 weeks. We're talking fantasy football playoff time. I know that it happens in week 15 this season, but it's basically here. I feel like this is the time of the season to, like I said before on this show over the past couple episodes, it is peak trade season. Last week certainly was, with 6 teams on bye, but you got a pretty good idea of where you're at in the standings. If you're up near the top, that's great. Let's pick on some opponents in your league that are not at the top, that are fighting for wins this week. Do they have a Marquise Brown on their squad? You got Baltimore and Las Vegas here on a bye. Can you acquire any players from those teams? You got teams that are maybe feeling like they're out of it at 1-6, or maybe 2-5, feeling like they're out of it, but maybe they want to make one last push to have to get there and get into the fantasy, just get into the dance. That's it. You just need to get into the dance. A head-to-head matchup, anything can happen. You know this. It really is about the matchups when it comes to the final couple weeks of the fantasy football season, come fantasy football playoff time. So I want to hear who Justin's thinking, like who he's looking to buy, who he's looking to sell, and we do have a lot of questions to get to as well. So leave them there. I'm seeing a couple roll in here. Sean McCormick, Boone, what a good day. Already made dog bets on the Lions and the football team this week. I can't hate. I can't hate on that. I understand where you're coming from, Sean McCormick. If you have any questions, you're following along here on the YouTube page, on the Twitter stream, please leave them there. I'll follow along on the Twitter page as well to get to some of those questions, but we would really appreciate you to smash that like button if you're watching on our FTN YouTube page, subscribe, and leave a comment there if you do have one or a question. If you're watching here on Game Plus a little bit later on, you can always reach out at Chris Meaney. The DMs are open. A lot really to get to on this show. Of course, we will talk football. I don't really want to dive into yesterday too much. I mean, that football game was kind of how we expected. We got some right and some wrong. We got the Alex Collins attempts. He didn't get the yards. We got the cover with Seattle. We got the under. I mean, did we ever sweat out that under? This is like neither team can throw on offense. We didn't get Tyler Lockett's receiving yards. We didn't get Marquez Callaway's receiving yards either. It was an ugly game. The Seahawks are basically done. They needed to get that one, and the Saints find a way to get it done, led by Alvin Kamara and all that usage out of the backfield, right? I mean, he made up for several games this season without getting a lot of targets or a lot of catches. It was just like check down, figure it out, Seattle. Maybe throw the football a little bit instead of running into a wall. I had Pete Carroll last night after the game. He said that they wanted to run the football more, and they were surprised that they couldn't establish the run. Have you been paying attention at all? Pete Carroll is one of the best run defenses in the league over the last 5 years. They went like 30 some odd games in a row without allowing a 100-yard rusher. He just like Collins was just running into a wall. And I know Geno made some bad throws and it was rainy last night, but I just would have liked to see him throw the football a little bit more. I mean, he targeted DK Metcalf in his very first throw. It was like an 84-yard touchdown to the house. And then I think he went his way maybe, I think at the end of the day, it was like 5 targets, 2 grabs, but he really didn't look his way for like a long time. And there was a point in that game yesterday, too. It was like 30 minutes of actual real time before Geno even threw another pass. So it was a weird game. Not a lot of scoring in there. I appreciate the question, Steve Curry. We will get to that. That's a great question. Montgomery and Herbert rest of the season. That is one that I will bring up with Justin Boone. There are several games in the NHL here this evening as well. 7, in fact. So we have some NHL picks and some props on this show yesterday. Got lucky with a couple. We went 8 for 10, 4 for 5 on the props, and then 4 for 5 on the picks. We really got lucky with the Florida Panthers. I mean, I didn't feel great given that pick, a puck line pick at minus 160. I probably never do that again. It's not a great feeling, honestly, when you give that pick to subscribers over at FTN and it's such a, juiced up pick. And if you don't get it, honestly, I don't like to be on the wrong side of that. So pretty lucky that we got an empty net to get to that, for them to win by 2 goals. It really was, if you watch the game, it was a heavy dose of Florida like I expected, but Arizona scored a couple goals in the third and made it interesting, and I sweated that one out. So we got lucky to get that, and then we got burned on the Flames scoring with 5 seconds left to win 5-1 instead of 4-1, so we didn't get the under there. So some highs and some lows, of course. You know how it is in the NHL, but we got 5 picks here today from a money line and an over-under standpoint, and then 5 more shot props as well, a couple dogs and a couple plus money shot props to get to. We're up to 19 units over at ftnbets.com in the NHL. If you're looking to be part of the FTN fam, as I said multiple times on this show, you get every pick across every sport from every expert. You get the tools. There's some wide receiver cornerback matchup tools, which are awesome to help you into DFS land, help you with your start and sits in your own season-long leagues. And a lot of other tools as well, pace tools. You got the air yards, which is absolutely free. I forgot that one's a free one. You got to take advantage of that air yards tool. It's pretty cool. You see the ADOT, the target share. You see which wide receivers are getting targeted down the field and which guys are really just getting a big bulk of their team's air yards, which can go a long way. Air yards is not like the end all when it comes to predicting fantasy points, but certainly volume and opportunity is the name of the game in fantasy. So I personally love it. I like to look each week to see which guys are trending up and trending down, and something that I take care of over at our YouTube page as well. And we'll address it. We can address it here on this show to take a look at some of the air yard leaders and see if it could translate into just real yards in the NFL. So NHL is the promo code for you, 20% off. I don't know how long Josh Kalachis is going to let that fly, but 20% off is the best discount going over at FTN. So use that promo code NHL and you save yourself a little bit of cash. Just sign up for the month, hang out in the Discord chat, see if you like it, and then you could re-up after that month is over. And of course, tonight is first pitch in the Fall Classic, the World Series happening this evening between the Houston Astros and the Atlanta Braves. It's Charlie Morton on the bump and Framber Valdez for the Astros. The Astros are favored. They are favored not only to win this game, but they're favored to win the World Series. We'll touch on all of that towards the end of the show. I got a pick, and as we said yesterday, I am in on the Braves. I got a future at 10-1 for December. I'm not going to hedge. It is what it is. I just, it's at minus 145 to win the World Series for the Astros. There's really no value, so I'm just all in on the Braves here. And honestly, I like their chances. I really do. I think that they have a really strong pitching staff and 3 pitchers in Morton, Anderson, and Fried, who keep the ball on the ground. I think that's a plus to go up against this heavy-hitting Astros team, and they're feeling it right now. The Atlanta Braves got a little bit of mojo going on. First World Series appearance since 1999. The Astros with their 3rd appearance in their last 5 years. We're going to break it all down a little bit later on, but I've wasted enough time, and most of it was dedicated to the Eagles. Don't stress me out, Tino, about Philly. Yes, the Lions just get it done this weekend. McCormick will be happy. Laying a little bit of juice on the dogs. But Justin Boone is in here next. He is from The Score. We're going to talk about a couple buy lows and sell highs, what he's doing in the waiver wire land, and also a couple questions to get to as well. So Mean Streets continues right here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you, and an absolute pleasure to bring in one of the best in the industry, absolutely one of the best fantasy football rankers. And as I said, Justin, off the top, just a straight up good dude, man. At Justin Boone, at The Score. Look at all the trophies behind you. Man, it's been a long time. How are you, sir? Come on, man. Embrace those things. Look at that. That's awesome.
I'm doing great. What do they say? It's like worshiping false idols or something. I'm surrounding myself by all this stuff. But yeah, no, I'm doing great. And yeah, it's always great to chat with you. I wish we had like the pre-show. We need like the green room so we could talk and catch up a little. I just jumped right in here and sneak attack, throw me into the fire. But yeah, it's always great to catch up, man. And you mentioned in the show earlier, we had some great times with Jake Seeley on the show back in the day, which I don't mean to sound old, but it's been a few years now since we did that.
Goodness.
So yeah, it's great anytime I get to talk to you guys.
Yeah, dude, it does feel like such a long time ago, and I've seen some people that are still hanging out over at Anthem Sports and Entertainment in the control room here in Toronto, like Sean McCormick. A shout out to Andrew Reed and all those guys who were a part of the production that we had, which, you're right, feels like forever ago, the rankings reveal show with yourself and Jake Seeley, and we were just breaking things down, and you're still kicking, you're still going strong over at The Score. So amazing stuff, man, to see you still killing it in the industry. We got some questions here, which is great. We usually don't get a lot of questions, so it's awesome to have you on. I mean, you retweeted, so we're getting some thoughts here. We'll get to some of those in a little bit, Justin. Let's just, before we get to buy lows and sell highs, I wanted to see who you're targeting. This week is different in terms of waiver wires. Like, there's only 2 teams on bye. Last week was the week from hell with 6 teams. And man, the top 13 running backs were like, I think 8 of them were definitely waiver wire pickups and still owned in sub 50% of most leagues out there. Is there a guy this week that you have like at the top of your list of a guy that you're looking to get this week as we head into week 8?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's good and bad to a week like this. And yeah, it's a pretty bad waiver wire week. When I tweeted it out last night, I put a bunch of the names in the tweet, and I got a couple responses that were just like, woof, like that's a rough list of names, right? This week, I think really the main guy is Kenneth Gainwell. And we saw Gainwell do some things earlier in the season. They went away from him a little bit, and they were trying to put more on Miles Sanders' plate. But now with Miles Sanders listed as week to week here, and the initial reports, it's a low ankle sprain. So we don't think it's going to be something that's going to keep him out for too long. But you look at this juicy matchup here going against the Lions, and you figure they're going to be able to put up some points, especially on the ground. The Lions are giving up the most fantasy points to running backs this year. So Gainwell, a great pickup. And if you want to get somebody on the cheap, you can get Boston Scott, who actually got more carries in the game than Gainwell did this week after Sanders went out. Gainwell ran more routes and played more snaps and more targets by far, but Scott did get more carries. So both those guys could have pretty good games, depending what the Eagles decide to do here, because we don't need to get conspiratorial, but there's a lot of talk that I don't know if you've talked about it yet already, but the Eagles, it might make more sense for them to let the Lions win this game as far as trying to get that first overall pick.
That's right. Yeah. Producer Tino, before we got on here, was like, I think the Lions may get their first win of the season here. How would that make you feel? And it's like, obviously people who know I follow the Philadelphia Eagles pretty closely. It'd make me feel all right. Like, it's like got 2 top 6 picks as of right now, owning Miami's as well. So I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of say, all right, maybe we'll lean with Boston Scott. Jordan Howard's going to be active. I don't think he's going to be a factor. But then, Justin, you will really officially know if the Eagles are into tanking if they roll out Jordan Howard this weekend coming. But I agree with you. I think Kenneth Gainwell has the most upside. We've seen him catch a couple receiving touchdowns so far this season. He's been used inside the red zone. He's a great pass catcher. I do think that Boston Scott in a deeper format, will go kind of under the radar. It could be that cheap play. Remember a couple weeks ago, and we'll talk about the Bears backfield in the next segment because there are some questions when it comes to Chicago. A couple weeks ago, I know in a lot of my leagues, it was heavy Damian Williams, and Khalil Herbert was that guy who kind of went under the radar that you can get a little bit cheaper, and all of a sudden he's been the guy over the past couple weeks. Boston Scott, I think, is a better pass blocker. I could see him getting some first and second down work, but I mean, why not just roll with Kenneth Gainwell and see what you really have in the kid that you drafted this past season? Who's a guy that you're looking to acquire? I said that this is peak trade season. It could be in a redraft, in a dynasty league, it could be, but maybe from just a redraft standpoint, who are some players that you have your eye on that you think maybe, hey, these guys could be available and they can help me out?
I mean, there's lots. One thing I'll say too is I think people frame it the wrong way. Like this time of year, people kind of act like teams that are in contention can go and take advantage of these teams that aren't doing so well. it could be mutually beneficial, right? Like if there's a team out there that only has 1 or 2 wins and they're holding Christian McCaffrey at this point, they can't really wait on him coming back. So McCaffrey's the kind of guy I've gone out and tried to get him a bunch of places, and he might not come back till week 10, maybe even later. All I need is 3 weeks from him, right? Week 15, 16, 17. That's all I'm looking for from a guy like that. But I just think you should look for trades that benefit both teams. And there's a lot of deals you can make, especially like you said, this time of year. We can start with the obvious ones. Let's look at DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and the same kind of situation where Russ is out. Things haven't looked as good this week. I know that DK Metcalf had the big long touchdown, but other than that, they barely used him. Tyler Lockett has that like mind meld with Russell Wilson. So Russell Wilson's out. His numbers go in the tank, but Russ is going to be back here sooner rather than later. And that second half of the season, they're going to be just fine. I think that passing attack. So if you can go out and get those guys now where maybe a little rough here for another couple weeks, they have a bye week coming up too in week 9, I believe. And then after that, we might see Russ the rest of the way and things will be a lot better. Geno Smith, they don't trust him. They're just running the ball constantly and going nowhere with it. So we need Russ back in that offense. And once he's back, things are going to look a lot better for Metcalf and Lockett.
I love that call. It's been back-to-back weeks where I've brought both of them up, and I think, you said it perfectly. I mean, if you're up near the top two, you can afford to make that kind of move and take on that risk for these couple weeks. It does sound like Russell Wilson's just a couple weeks away. They play Jacksonville, then they're on the bye, I do believe, so we could see him week 10. Like you said with CMC, I mean, to have those guys when it matters on your team, I mean, you may not be ranking those 2 wide receivers as top 30, 25 wide receivers with Geno Smith under center, but I know that you're probably going to rank them as top 20 wide receivers when Russell Wilson is back under center. I love that call. Absolutely. And I've been on the other side of it, honestly. I mean, I have DK in one league where I'm struggling, and I've made him available to people up at the top of my league. Like, guys, I can't afford DK got the touchdown yesterday and basically didn't really get any more looks until late in that game. I just can't afford the inconsistencies. I need guys right now. And then the bye week coming up, it's like, guys, you want DK? Like, the guy up at the top doesn't want anything to do with DK in my league. It's like, think about DK on your squad come week 15, 16, and 17. He's like, I don't want to really take on that risk. It's like, I think that's an opportunity to jump in. I got to ask you about Allen Robinson. Like, what do you do at this point with Allen Robinson, man? I just did a show with Jake, and Jake was giving me this guy or that guy, and man, you should hear some of the names that he mentioned, like Khalif Raymond or Allen Robinson, or Jalen Reagor or Allen Robinson, Alan Lazard or Allen Robinson. Like, are you to this point, his stock is at an all-time low? Yeah, probably don't feel great rolling him out. What do you do, man?
I wouldn't go near him. I mean, I picked him up. He got dropped in one of the leagues that I'm in last week, and I picked him up because I had bye week issues and played him. And I mean, I regretted it. It's, he's a guy that I don't think can come anywhere near your lineup at this point. And you hope that a rookie quarterback like Justin Fields is going to be able to, improve a little bit as the season goes along, but it's a real disaster in that offense right now. And you go up against a team like the Bucs where you have to throw against them, and we don't even really see big stats from him in that one. So I think he goes to your bench, and when we talk about players that you could drop list kind of guys, it really just depends who else is out there, who you're picking up. But I don't know if I go quite as low as some of those names you mentioned, like Khalif Raymond, but that just tells you where he's at. Like, that is where Robinson is at. And another guy like Darnell Mooney, his teammate, who it's kind of the same thing with him. You can't trust these guys in your lineup. So if there are players on the waiver wire that have that upside, have a chance to give you a big week or two, at this point, I am dropping those guys. Because in addition to dropping him, you might put him on another team. Another manager picks him up like I did this week, and they end up actually being a roster clogger and hurting another team. So I think that's a smart move.
Yeah, good call. I mean, he's been a top 10 wide receiver in each of the past 2 seasons. I guess he's definitely going to leave Chicago. It'll be interesting to see where he goes maybe next year. It's been, I can't imagine how frustrated he is as a player inside an offense, just not really getting any looks or any targets, dealing with Matt Nagy and an inexperienced quarterback in Justin Fields. I guess, do you feel the same about Robbie Anderson? Is another guy who's getting a lot of targets, leads the league in drops, but at least he's getting targets.
He's getting targets. You'd think that at some point it's going to come around here, but there are so many problems. The only shining light for him is that they're going up against the Falcons this week. So you figure Darnold, I know there's been so much talk that, are they going to bench him again? Is it over? Are they going to trade for Deshaun Watson? This is the kind of get right matchup. You go up against the Falcons. They should be able to throw without issue in that one. So I don't know that I'm really putting Robbie Anderson in my lineup until I see him do it, but he's a guy that I'm willing to still hold on my bench here for a little while, just because, like you said, the volume's there. And normally when the volume's there, you eventually will see the production come his way.
I got a couple guys written over at ftnfantasy.com as do a trade target article every single week. Take a look at dynasty guys as well, players to hold and buy and sell and drop, all those guys. I wrote Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon and T. Higgins, but I don't really feel like those guys would actually be available. But when I looked at T. Higgins yesterday, I saw his ownership just drop 3% in like Yahoo leagues, and I was like, okay, so maybe people are dropping him in shallow 8 or 10 team leagues, but that also makes me think like maybe he's available with Jamar Chase getting all the attention. But Boone, like, he just had 15 targets last week, and you wonder what defenses do with Jamar Chase. Do they start to double this guy? I really like the direction of this Bengals offense. Like, those three players, Jones, Higgins, Mixon, are you into just holding them, buying them where you can?
Yeah, for sure. I think the Bengals look fantastic. I think, they had some struggles early in the season, and it was expected, right? With Burrow coming back from the injury and maybe not being quite himself or quite being on point for those first few weeks. But now we're starting to see them hit their stride. And Higgins is a guy that we saw what he could do last year, right? He has a lot of upside. And yes, Jamar Chase has come in and become that true number one. And Jamar Chase might be the best receiver in the NFL right now. I don't know. But yeah, he's come in and taken over. That doesn't mean that Higgins can't put up big stats. They're going to throw the ball more. We've seen that start to happen now with Burrow feeling a little more comfortable. I think the guy that really loses out here is Tyler Boyd, because Boyd had a couple good games. But when Higgins has been out there, when he's been healthy, Boyd really has taken a back seat, and Higgins, a touchdown scorer in an offense like this. Yeah, a guy that I'm all over. I don't think that you're going to be able to get Mixon or Aaron Jones.
No,
I've seen some people mention Aaron Jones too as a potential buy low. I don't think so. I mean, the guy, he just comes with that name value as well. Even if he has a down week or two, people know the upside. He has that kind of 4 or 5 touchdown game in him at any moment. So I don't think you're really going to get him at a discount. I'm looking at some of the rookies potentially as buy lows right now. And I know everybody talks about Javonte Williams, but he's a guy that this is your chance. You try to get him now, and it's going to be over at some point here, because late in the season, that Broncos schedule, it is so good. They have a week 11 bye. Often we see the rookie running back after the bye week start to take on a little more. We don't know. Melvin Gordon's still doing okay there, but I'm really impressed by Javonte in the fact that we weren't sure if they were going to give him a big pass catching role. And he's really been involved as a pass catcher, has at least 3 targets or 3 catches, I believe, in every game in the last 5 or 6. You look at last week, he had 6 catches in that one. So they're willing to use him in that role. They're willing to use him kind of in every situation. And that's fantastic. That's what we want to see as the trust grows there. That late season schedule, I can't help but think that he is going to be a league winner for people. That was something I was looking at before the season. So I don't know. They're going to have a big game at some point, and all of a sudden that window is going to close. I'd be trying to get him while you still can.
Yeah, I do like that. I've written him up probably 5 weeks now as like a buy this guy where you can. And then last week I was just like, you know what? I may be done with him. Is he going to win me consolation brackets like Cam Akers did last season? But honestly, like, you bring up a good point. That bye week, you could see the change. Melvin Gordon is on the last year of his deal here. He's been practicing in a limited fashion over the past couple weeks, but I see what you see. I see more targets out of the backfield. I see they're trusting him a little bit more when they're playing from behind. The first couple weeks, it was a very soft schedule, and it was a lot of Melvin Gordon just kind of getting him, familiar with the offense and Javonte. But it seems like every week, Boone, there's like a highlight reel play from Williams. I mean, he's such a terrific back, and he's picking up some blitzes. I agree. Now is probably the time to go ahead and get this guy. I wish that Melvin Gordon would completely go away so we could see just maybe a 70-30 split and see what kind of upside he does have inside that offense.
I mentioned the schedule there, but 6 of the Broncos' last 7 opponents are in the top 12 in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs. So it is just so nice. Cupcake down the stretch for them. And yeah, very excited about Javonte.
And I agree as well. I don't think Aaron Jones is out there or available for people. And, you could see a few targets, especially with Devontae Adams looking like he could miss this Thursday night game. I've tried to get Aaron Jones. I can't get him, but I do feel like there are some people, I know you probably hear the noise too. There's some people in the community that seem to be just a little sour on Aaron Jones. I think they just expect him to score a touchdown every single game, like kind of what he did over the past 2 years leading up to this season. But that's tough to do. We'll take a quick break. Hang out, dude. We got some questions, and I want to know who's the guy that maybe you're just looking to get rid of off your roster as well. Mean Streets continues right here with Chris Meaney and Justin Boone on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with Justin Boone, the lead fantasy analyst over at The Score, also the host of the Score Fantasy Football Podcast. As I mentioned earlier, one of the best dudes in the industry and one of the top rankers multiple times, Justin finishing inside the top 5. A winner, as you see the trophies there. And my guy George, 3 putts for par, he runs the graphics for us here on the show. He's impressed, man. That's a whole lot of trophies. Eye emoji. He's digging it there. He's seeing the hard word and he loves it. We're starting to get some questions rolling here, but before we get into them, I want to know who's a guy that you're looking to flip off your roster. Who's a sell high candidate for you?
I don't know. I mean, there's a few. I don't know if this guy's a sell high, but Antonio Gibson, I'd be getting rid of him for whatever you can. And I know Schefter kind of had that report over the weekend that maybe he was feeling a little bit better with the shin issues that he's been having, but let's just take a look at it here. I mean, what he did early in the season, we got a little excited, right? He had 5 targets in week 1. So you think, okay, that projection we had before the year where the coaching staff was saying he's going to be more involved and they're going to use him more as a pass catcher. It's happening. Since then, barely at all. It's mostly just a couple catches a game. I don't think he's gone over 3 targets in any game since then. And now more recently with this injury, we're seeing his playing time dip down. He's down around 40% the last 2 games here. So I'm still worried that those issues are going to pop up with the injury, that eventually he's going to miss some time here. That scares me quite a bit. And I think based on the name value, you still have a shot to get rid of him. And I talked about making a trade for Christian McCaffrey. One of the McCaffrey deals where I got him, I traded Gibson as part of the package going the other way because I wasn't very confident here that it was going to be good for him. And you take a look even at their schedule coming up, and they got the Broncos this week. The Broncos, not a great matchup. They haven't been as good against the run recently. But then after that, week 9, they have a bye. They come back from the bye, and they're going up against the Buccaneers run D. We know how good they are in shutting down running backs. And after that, the Panthers run D, who are actually giving up the fewest points to fantasy running backs this year. So he's got a pretty tough stretch over the next little part here. And I think one of the things that's important this time of year is, in most leagues, the trade deadline's around week 12 or so. I don't know if people have backed it up based on the extra week this season or not, but you have a window here. You can just look at the next 3-4 weeks, take a look at the schedule, make some deals now, get some players that can help you get some wins over the next month. And they're right before the deadline. Make some more trades to set yourself up for the playoffs. You don't have to necessarily just be looking at the fantasy playoffs at this point, especially when we're talking about running backs, because we know how often they can get hurt, right? So Gibson's for sure somebody I'd be trying to get rid of. DeAndre Hopkins is another one that I was saying maybe wait until after that Texans game, the revenge game. You almost were guaranteed a touchdown in that one, right? And he had an okay fantasy day there. But you look at it, last year, he was averaging 10 targets a game. This year, he doesn't have 10 targets in a single game this season yet, right? So I think just with all the weapons they have there now, they've gone out, they've filled out the receiving core, they've added Zach Ertz at tight end. He's just starting now to take on some more work there. So I just have a hard time believing that they really need to pepper Hopkins as much as they did in the past. And that's not to say that he's a bad fantasy asset. I still think he's going to be a low-end wide receiver 1, maybe a high-end wide receiver 2. But if you can get that top 5 wide receiver value for him still, and I think he has a touchdown 3 straight games here, so he's still putting up pretty good fantasy numbers, I would try to move off him at this point if you can.
Yeah, a lot of his production has been just via the touchdown. I saw that as well, and it's a lot of Arizona guys. I mean, I would make them available to everybody in my league, to be honest with you, just because of what you talked about. I mean, they run a lot of 4 wide receiver sets. I mean, Zach Ertz just came in and had a touchdown. I agree, his usage probably goes up, but in terms of just running routes and targets, I mean, he wasn't even inside the top 3 or 4. I mean, Chase Edmonds is catching balls out of the backfield. There's a lot of mouths there in Arizona, so I certainly get that one as well. Let's get to some questions here. We got some people who are tuning in and would like to hear your thoughts. So Stephen Curry says, what are your thoughts, Justin, on Montgomery and Herbert rest of the season? What do? Do you consider flipping Herbert? He had one of the most surprising performances last week. I mean, the top 100 yards against that Bucs defense was pretty impressive, and he caught a couple passes as well. What do you make of this backfield moving forward? I mean, Montgomery's probably a couple weeks away.
Yeah, I think one of the worries with Montgomery, and we talked about this before the season, right? Last year when he put up those big stats, it was easy schedule and 0 competition for touches. You had Tariq Cohen out. They didn't really have another option there to take on any work whatsoever. This year coming in, we looked at it. We said, okay, they went out and got Damian Williams. Now they actually do have a backup that could take on some work. Now Montgomery gets hurt. He's coming back. Yes, Williams is back healthy. It clearly is Khalil Herbert above Williams on the depth chart now, especially after we saw that last week. So I think now you're going to have that other guy, maybe even Williams as well, getting involved here. So I don't think that Montgomery has the same ceiling. Yeah, when he comes back, he'll still be sort of that low end RB2. He'll get you some decent weeks if he can find the end zone, but he's not going to have that massive volume like he had last season. And the schedule might not be as easy as it was last year, because we saw a couple of those guys last season, Jonathan Taylor and Montgomery, have those really, really soft schedules down the stretch. So you look at it that way, and anybody that thinks that Montgomery could be an RB1, which I can't imagine that many people at this point, but before the season, there were some people that still felt that way. I don't think he's going to be that at all. So if you could deal him, and normally when you have a guy coming back off injury, you want to wait until like that week that he's about to come back, because then he's getting headlines, right? Everybody's talking about him. Maybe you can get the most at that point for him, but I would be trying to deal away Herbert and him if you can get decent value for them.
Yeah, I think Herbert's stock is at an all-time high right now. Anthony Silva says, should I trade Ridley and Schultz for Nick Chubb? It does sound like Nick Chubb is going to return here this week. Man, Dearness Johnson, I mean, that guy looked like an absolute superstar. I mean, credit to him, and also the offensive line in Cleveland, that's just so good. Calvin Ridley is interesting, right? I mean, he scored the touchdown last week. He's been disappointing. Kyle Pitts has shown up here over the past couple weeks. It was a big Pitts game. Schultz, he got Michael Gallup potentially turning to the lineup this week, and that's kind of where Schultz took off. Ridley and Schultz for Chubb, I guess it's all about context, I'm sure, as you know, Boone. Like, if you need a running back, I think that's a move that you could make. What do you think?
Yeah, that's the tough part with almost any roster question like this, right? You need all the other details involved. And sometimes people probably hate it, but I'll respond just asking. I need more information. Just give me, I need to know what else is going on with your team. Looking at this one, though, I would definitely take Chubb. It seems like they're pretty confident he's going to come back. Josina Anderson had that report yesterday that barring any sort of setback that'll happen between now and the game, that we will see Chubb out there in week 8. Now, I think anybody that thought with Hunt out that Chubb could maybe get that top 5 workhorse volume, I don't think that's going to happen. I think from what we saw with Dearness Johnson, he can take on that number 2 role, and they tend to like to use more than one back. That being said, still love Nick Chubb. Still think he's an RB1 in fantasy. And if you can go and get an RB1 at this point for Ridley, who one of the things that I think maybe we miscalculated on Ridley before the season, or I could say that I did, was Kyle Pitts coming along as fast as he does. A lot of the Ridley numbers that we looked at with Julio out, all of a sudden Ridley was putting up huge stats, averaging over 100 yards a game in the 7 games where Julio wasn't in the lineup last season. But now Pitts is stepping in, so Pitts kind of offset some of that Julio loss, right? And really, really there's been some other issues going on, obviously, but yeah, I don't think we can consider him up near, the top 5 or so, which before the season, we thought there was a good shot that he could even potentially lead the league in targets this year. And that's obviously not happening. And with the other weapons there, with Cordell Patterson so involved, I'm more than happy to move off from Schultz and Ridley, especially since we're going to have Michael Gallup back this week. So that could impact Dalton Schultz a little bit as well. So give me Chubb all day in that one.
Yeah, I would agree there. And I also agree that I think Dearness Johnson earned himself a couple touches here and there. I mean, why give Chubb 20-plus carries when you can lean on a guy that just proved, I mean, he basically won the game himself last week against the Broncos. Anthony did say he has Adams, MJJ, which I believe would be Marvin Jones Jr., I'm guessing there, Judy, Cooks at wide receiver. So, yeah, I think you could make the move. I mean, it looks like you got a couple wide receivers. Maybe Judy comes back. Maybe you can make that move and get Chubb. One more adjustment before we get you out of here. William Reel, who can I trade away to acquire Javonte Williams? He has Woods, Lockett, and Antonio Brown. RB position is poor. Aaron Jones, Pollard, and DJ Dillon on his roster currently. So he's looking to acquire Javonte Williams. Woods, Lockett, or AB? I mean, would you just deal Lockett? I mean, we talked about Lockett depending on the situation. If you could flip Lockett, would you make that move? Or you want to hold him for that playoff run?
I don't want to hold him for that playoff run. I don't know that I'd want to trade any of those receivers, to be honest, for Javonte. That's one that, it's kind of tough. And I would recommend to people, I put out on Wednesday mornings, I put out a trade value chart. I haven't updated it yet this week, so it's a little harder for me to comment on some of these trades, but check that out over at the Score. Have trade values for basically everybody. I go pretty deep on those, and I know a lot of people love those. I get hit up quite a bit Wednesday mornings. Where's the chart? But yeah, for that one, I think I'd hang on to those receivers right now. I really would, or I'd try to, if you're going to get Javonte back, try to get to Javonte plus, because really value-wise, I don't think that you'd be getting, what those receivers are worth based on what they've done and based on what they can do the rest of the season. And Lockett would be the one if you had to pick out of them. But like we talked about already, Lockett's value is going to go way back up. So you don't want to sell low on him.
No, dude, I could chat to you all day, man. Hopefully we can do this again before the season does wrap up. Why don't you just plug what you're doing over at The Score and where people can check out your work?
Yeah, all my content's at The Score. Download the app. Everything's designed for the mobile app. Yes, you can click on the links on my Twitter page and you can see the website, but we try to design all the content to be viewed on mobile. So you can download the app for free. The Score Fantasy Football Podcast, which you've been on before. Going to have you on again soon. You can get that pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. So check that out. And yeah, lots of content. I'll have my first edition of my rankings go up Tuesday. So I'll have those out later today. We'll have a podcast episode previewing week 8 tomorrow, that trade value chart and lots more stuff. Start, sit, stash, quit, which I do on Fridays. So it's a very busy time of year, as you know, but it's a super fun time of year. And it's the time where, like you said, like we've talked about, you got to make moves right now to set yourself up for the second half of the season. We know plenty based on what we've seen so far, lots of weeks of data. So now you got to make those moves. And hopefully today we help some people figure some of those out.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Great podcast, great work over there at The Score. And also, I think the best app in the game. I think we can agree on that from a sports fan. I mean, it is fantastic. When I see some of my buddies in the States, when we go on these football trips, I see them rocking and I'm like, oh, nice. Absolutely. Like, yeah, I mean, that's the app you should be rocking. Justin, appreciate the time at Justin Boone on the Twitter machine. If you don't already follow Justin, we're going to turn the page, talk a little hockey. We also got a World Series preview as that kicks off tonight in Houston. Don't go anywhere. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on a Game Plus Network. I just love the opportunity to talk to Justin. As I said, a great follow, very sharp football mind. We didn't get to a lot of your questions, unfortunately. There are a couple that I'm seeing rolling through here on the Twitter account, like Michael Gallup returns, buying. Is Rashad Bateman worth the wait? Like, yes, Bateman is certainly worth the wait. I wouldn't buy Michael Gallup. I'd probably sell him, as Justin said, when guys come close to returning to the lineup. It's like an opportunity to take those guys and maybe flip them. I did see another question about Alex Collins. Is it time to drop Collins with basically a 4-man committee in Seattle? I wouldn't drop Collins. Like, he's still getting a bulk of the carries, and I think he will continue to get them against Jacksonville. Rashad Penny is going to be sprinkled in here and there. It's not an ideal situation, but if you need a running back, you roll him out there. And there was a question about Gibson there, so I think we answered that question. We talked about it yesterday. I don't know if it was on this show or the one with Jake Seeley, All in Football. Football Bets TV was Antonio Gibson. We were both in on getting rid of this guy if you can. He didn't play a big bulk of the snaps. Towards the end of the game, it was really just a lot of J.D. McKissick, and he is dealing with that injury, and reports out of Washington is that he's going to continue to deal with this injury until he has a couple weeks rest. And he's just not used the way that the fantasy community thought that he would as a bell cow back catching balls out of the backfield, as Justin alluded to. It happened early on in the season, but he struggles as a pass blocker. And when they're down in the games, it's J.D. McKissick who's on the field, certainly in a 2-minute drill. We've seen it multiple times. So Gibson's a guy that I'd be looking to get rid of my roster. Stop offering me Gibson. Yesterday there was a Gibson offer for Calvin Ridley. It's like, I can't do that. I get what you can, I think, for Antonio Gibson to help you out there. So hopefully we've helped anybody out. You have any questions, you're watching the replay here, you leave it there in the YouTube section, and I will circle back before waivers run here, and I'll try to address those questions. So 7 games on the ice here tonight. This is what I'm thinking in the NHL from a pick standpoint, from a money line standpoint, and some props a little bit later on in this segment. So up at the top here, I got the Minnesota Wild at -120, a matchup here against the Vancouver Canucks. The Wilds haven't had the best start of the season. They're struggling to find a little bit of offense and keeping the puck out of their net, but I still do like Minnesota here at these odds at -120. I got Winnipeg here at -140. I wouldn't go any higher than -150. They are on the road against the Ducks. They have lost to Anaheim already this season. I don't understand the schedule, what's happening here. Like, Winnipeg is playing Anaheim a third straight time and already a second time in Anaheim. They just had an Anaheim, San Jose, Minnesota run out west, and now they're starting another West Coast road trip with Anaheim, LA, and San Jose. I thought we were out of that bubble repeating schedule, but I guess not. But I do like the Jets, despite, these odds are, at -140. This is why I wouldn't go higher than -150, because there's still no Mark Scheifele and there's no Blake Wheeler. But at the end of the day, I still like this Jets team. I think they're sound defensively. Hellebuck had a strong game the last time out. He's been a little shaky to start the season, but they can do enough here. They just beat Anaheim the other day, so I am going to roll with the Jets. I like the under between San Jose and Nashville. You can get it at plus money at 5.5, but I just like to get that 6. We got burned yesterday with that late goal, 5 seconds left in the game. We didn't get the under between Calgary and the Rangers, so under 6 here. And I'm tempted to take the Sharks. They're not here on my board, but I like them at plus money as well. They've been playing really good hockey this season. They just lost to the Bruins, but they had a really strong, they're continuing the road trip. They had a really strong trip in Canada where they rolled through Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. And then I got the Canadians here at plus 110. It's the first time that I have bet on the Habs here, but I like them against Seattle. Both two teams here 1-5, but I think the Canadians found something at least offensively in their last game, put up a 6th spot in their last contest, and Seattle has been struggling to find some offense. I was a little worried that all the Canadians were at that Seattle game last night. I was seeing Instagram shots of them pounding Bud Lights, so hopefully they're not feeling too hungover here today, but I am going to take the Canadians at plus 110, and I just like this Calgary team. I had them as a playoff squad. I think that they make the playoffs this season. We're not going to get, Markstrom and net. It's the second half of a back-to-back, but the Devils without Jack Hughes, still like a lot of question marks in goal. I don't believe Mackenzie Blackwood is ready, but pick him up if you can and stash him because he is fully vaccinated and he's going to return to the lineup here pretty soon. But I do like the Flames overall. I think they're a really good hockey team. George, 3 putts for par. All right, Chris, which one is most risky? Help me. I think the most risky bet here on the board is probably the Flames with the back-to-back. I mean, I do like them. I'm taking them as a dog here, but considering they did play last night and, Markstrom's not going to get that start, that's the riskiest pick I will give you there, George. We got some props here next. Mean Streets continues on Game Plus Network. Keep her locked. Man, George kills me. I love this comment. I don't know if you could put this one up. It looks like I'm hitting the Bud Lights 2 tonight. George, I don't know, man. I feel like you're making me sweat at night. I feel like these are my picks. Like I have the same sort of parlays as you. You just haven't been hitting with the Leafs screw the other night. You had 4 or 5, and then last night you had the 3 of the 4, and you had the late Calgary goal, which you didn't get, and then the shot props, of course. Kachuk, you were in on it, and then the rest of the 4 of the 5 hit. We'll both be pounding some Bud Lights tonight, buddy, and hopefully the winners will be yours here this evening. This is what I'm thinking from a shot prop standpoint, and honestly, I probably maybe should have led with shot props. I think that it's easier to predict shot props than teams winning in the NHL. Sometimes the odds are better with shot props, and I just target volume shooters on power plays, getting a lot of ice time. I definitely look at matchups here, but I think there's I think it's easier to win with shot props as opposed to straight up picks. Here we go. So here's the shot props. I got 5 here for you. I got a couple Jets here on the board, and Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers, both of these guys over 2.5. I was surprised to see them actually at 2.5. I think he can get them. Nikolai Ehlers is, you see 3.5 there. You can actually get 2.5 for Nikolai Ehlers over at DraftKings and Caesars, and then you could get Kyle Connor. He's a little bit more juiced up, but I do like Connor a little bit more than Ehlers if you're going to pick one of the two to put it in a parlay, because you're not going to be able to pick both of these Jets. But Kyle Connor is a guy that shoots the puck a little bit more. But listen, 11 shots in 2 games this season against the Ducks. He has 4 shots in at least 5 games. As for Ehlers, he's got 11 shots in his last 2 games and 14 shots in 2 games against Anaheim. I mentioned that the Jets have played Anaheim already twice this season, and these guys have easily clear their shot prop, and the fact there's going to be no Scheifele and there's going to be no Blake Wheeler. These guys are going to get opportunity today for more ice time, and Connor's always been on that first power play unit, but Ehlers played on the first power play unit in the last game. So looking at these two guys, 11 shots in 2 games for Connor against the Ducks and 14 in 2 games for Ehlers against the Ducks. Those two pretty strong. I'd lean Connor over Ehlers if you're looking to get one of these guys in a parlay. Shea Theodore is the guy I like the most next. I mentioned last time we talked about Vegas is that, with no Pacioretty and no Mark Stone, that the offense is going to have to be, it's going to have to come from, yes, their top line with William Karlsson, Riley Smith, and Jonathan Marchessault, but it's also going to have to come from the back end with Alex Pietrangelo and Shea Theodore. You're going to have to see these guys drive the offense with no Stone and Pacioretty, and that's what we've seen now from Theodore. In the 3 games without those 2 guys, he's cleared 2.5 in each of those 3 games, 3 shots, and 5 shots, and his ice time, 25 minutes, 27 minutes, and 23 minutes, so he's not only getting a lot of opportunity, he's been the trigger man for Vegas on the power play. I like Jonathan Marchessault as well at 2.5 shots, but he's just juiced to the over. Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov over 2.5 has cleared it in 4 of his past 5 games. Another guy that eats up a lot of ice time. And here's a plus money one for you, plus 140. This is the guy that I like the least out of the names that I'm giving you here is Blake Coleman at 2.5. He put 8 pucks on net last night. He's got at least 3 shots in each of his first 4 games. It's a fun revenge narrative going up against his former squad in New Jersey, but look at Coleman's, just his statistics. Forget last season when he was a third-line player with Tampa, and look at when he was in a top 6 role with the Devils. He was one of just 3 players in the NHL a couple years ago to have over 200 shots, 200 hits, and 20-plus goals. He's a volume shooter. He likes to shoot the puck. He's playing inside a top 6. He's not getting any power play time, but I do like him, and it's not really just the revenge against the Devils. I like the fact that you get him at plus 140 in certain spots. I think I saw that over at DraftKings and at Caesars as well. We're going to preview the World Series. I got a couple minutes left here in Mean Streets. Don't go anywhere. We got some picks and baseball next. The Fall Classic begins tonight in Houston between the Astros and the Atlanta Braves. The Braves' first World Series appearance since 1999. The Astros, their third time in the dance in the last 5 seasons. You got Atlanta here plus 120 and the Astros minus 120. The total is at 8. Charlie Morton on the bump and Framber Valdez for the Astros. I like the Braves here tonight. I mentioned that I have a future on them at 10-1. I think that they win. The World Series odds is 130 and the Astros 145. The reason I think that they win this series is the pitching staff. I like their pitching staff as opposed to Houston's pitching staff. Lance McCullers in the World Series here. Greinke's not stretched out. Yes, you've had some strong performances from Luis Garcia, but guess what? Lefties crush Garcia, and they are heavy lefty up at the top of that Atlanta Braves roster. And you got some guys in Eddie Rosario who's been good as well. For this Atlanta team, it really is about the pitching. As I mentioned, you got Charlie Morton on the hill today, Max Fried and Ian Anderson. These guys are all very strong ground ball pitchers, so I think they can limit the damage. I like the bullpen in Atlanta as well, but how about Charlie Morton? 2 runs or fewer in his 3 starts here in the postseason. Atlanta hasn't played the Astros. They haven't played each other since 2017, so there's not a lot of history and data between these two teams, but Charlie Morton last year as a member of the Rays played the Houston Astros in the playoffs, and he had 10 2/3 innings against Houston last season, 7 hits, 0 earned runs, 11 K, and 2 walks. He is an absolute beast. He's a stud. He's a veteran. He's experienced. He knows a lot of the players over on the other side, having played for Houston and then having pitched against them last season in the postseason. So I like not only Atlanta to win the World Series, I think it goes the distance. I think it goes 7, but I also think that they get off to a strong start here tonight with Charlie Morton. So I'm picking the Braves. Dusty Baker, the only manager to lead 5 teams in the postseason, 0 World Series wins, and that continues this season. It's not just a hater thing. It's not. I don't want the Astros to win, but I think the Braves have the pitching to get it done. Thanks for taking the time to hang out here today. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a good one. Cheers.